Just like that, it's 2025 and 2024 is behind us. But before we go, I want to look back at some movies from this past year and rate my personal top 10, because we all like to hear ourselves yap sometimes, and YouTube videos are a great way to do that. Let me say up front that this ranking is my opinion and not meant to be an objective list at all. I tried to be as objective as possible, but there is definitely some personal taste thrown in. Like, I know that objectively, Anora is probably a more thoughtful, intricate, well-crafted film than the Garfield movie is, but I love Garfield more than any one person reasonably should, and I can't disrespect my boy. By the way, shout out to my buddy Mitchell for doing a video ranking everything he saw this year. I will not be doing that, but his video was what gave me the push to make my own, so go check it out if you have a free hour. For now, let's get into it.
You will be my instrument.
Kicking off the list at number 10 is Gladiator 2, or as I like to call it, Denzel Washington is the GOAT and I want to be friends with him. Gladiator 2 is a great watch, definitely one that needs to be seen in the theater with friends. And in fact, if this video was ranking theater experiences, this movie would probably be a lot higher on the list, because when I saw this with my friends, we all dressed up as gladiators, and we had one of our friends be the emperor, and he would do the thumbs up, thumbs down thing for all the movie trailers, which was really funny. Anyway, so it was a blast to see. I think what keeps it from being any higher for me on this list is that it's unsurprisingly derivative of Gladiator 1 and doesn't live up to the original at all. It felt like everything from Gladiator 1, but just less of it, and I think Paul Mescal was fine, but he did not touch Russell Crowe's performance as Maximus, in my opinion. The highlight of the movie was obviously Denzel Washington as Macrinus. He stole every single scene he was in, and even though he didn't try to do a Roman accent like everyone else, he was so clearly the most interesting character in the movie and having a blast with his role. He was wildly entertaining. I also really liked Pedro Pascal's character, though I don't think he got enough screen time. The battle scenes were all fun, especially the naval battle, which all the trailers hyped up. And I think there's nothing bad about the movie in any way. It's a great time that just doesn't quite live up to the glory of the original, but keep in mind how high the bar is for the original Gladiator. Moving on to number 9. Coming in at number 9 is a movie I did not hear many people talk about, but I thoroughly loved. It's Piece by Piece. You know, Piece by Piece, the Pharrell Williams Lego documentary, which certainly is a string of words that are related somehow. It was a joy to watch, and one of the most visually innovative documentaries I've ever even heard of. It can make the smallest moments feel super interesting, and the big moments get to be these grand spectacles, like when Pharrell is talking about his career getting rescued by the song Get Lucky with Daft Punk. Lego minifigures of Daft Punk show up in a spaceship, and they basically have a space rave set to the song, and it's like a musical number. It's awesome to watch. And a lot of people's biggest question for this movie was, why should Pharrell of all people get a theatrically released documentary above someone else in the music industry? And Piece by Piece resoundingly answers that question. This movie really shows just how much influence Skateboard P has on pop music over the past 15 years or so, and there are lots of fun cameos of faces you'll recognize. I will say some parts didn't perfectly translate to Lego form, like the backstory behind the song All Right by Kendrick Lamar, which is a rather famous anti-police brutality anthem. But bar for bar, I think Piece by Piece is a super fun watch with a heartfelt story and creativity oozing from every corner.
I'm joy.
I'm sadness.
I'm anger.
I'm disgust.
I'm poo.
Number 8, Inside Out 2. I went in really not wanting to like this movie because I felt like the original was such a strong, self-contained narrative that covered its own bases really well and didn't need much expanding into a franchise. But man, Inside Out 2 just impressed me so much and introduced so many concepts that justified its own existence. Progressing through Riley's life into the awkward teenage years gives a lot of room to really push her as a character rather than just her emotions, and the writers of the film nailed the painfully awkward universal experiences of being a teenager. I think most of the new emotions were a little underwhelming, like envy served almost no story purpose and ennui was really gimmicky, but Maya Hawke's voice work as Anxiety was unbelievably good. Side note, I really think there needs to be an Oscar category for voice work because voice actors deserve more respect and it's a completely different ballgame from traditional acting, but whatever. Good lord. The climax of Inside Out 2, I remember seeing this in theaters and the room just goes to a standstill. There were a bunch of kids running around in our theater and being loud and obnoxious, but they were even at full attention for the third act. It was gorgeous, and I honestly don't think that there was a dry eye for anyone above the age of 16 in the audience. Everyone was tearing up. It was beautiful, and really the third act alone makes me feel comfortable ranking Inside Out 2 here. Good job, Disney. Now let's try something original.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious! That ball was on the line!
Number 7, Challengers. Gosh, you want to talk about a movie that just grabs you by the throat and does not let go. I could talk for hours about how watertight the script is for this movie, and maybe I will someday, but for now I will just tell you that this is one of the best movies that I can never recommend to a family member. Aside from an absolutely insane storyline that doesn't falter once, I love the cinematography here. I haven't seen any other movies by Luca Guadagnino, but he impressed me a ton. Also, as a humble brag, men's singles tennis state champion, it was a really fun watch to see cinematic tennis gameplay because tennis doesn't get enough respect as a sport in the pickleball era. And if you have no other takeaways from Challengers, please walk away understanding that Zendaya is a phenomenal actress who needs more roles in big dramas. I mean, Mike Faist and Josh O'Connor as Art and Patrick were amazing, but Zendaya is the glue that holds the whole project together. Challengers is a super uncomfortable movie, and I usually hate narratives like this that are designed to make you uncomfortable, but I cannot stress enough how powerful it is as a full package. Next up, number 6.
I got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell.
The number 6 spot belongs to Saturday Night, which is a good segue off of Challengers because actually both of these movies have flawless screenplays that keep pushing along like a train just about to run off the tracks. I think Saturday Night's main positive for me is how good it is at drawing you into the story and keeping you there. This movie immediately places a ticking clock on screen, introduces you to our protagonist, makes you like him, and then it's off to the races. They give you a whole cast of relative unknowns whose job is solely to embody the actors they play and chew the scenery for the small moments they get. I had to praise this movie for how competent it is, which feels like a weird thing to praise it for, but it felt like it did literally everything right. All the actors, the score, the dialogue, the scenes, the comedy, the overwhelming sense of panic, it's so cohesive and every moment was awesome. The entire buildup of the movie leads to the Chevy Chase actor saying those iconic, moving, American words.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
And it's glorious. I also want to mention a scene where John Batiste playing Billy Preston plays the song Nothing from Nothing while the cast does final preparations for the live show, and the stage crew is quite literally laying the foundations of the stage right before they go to air. It is electricity in my veins. I've rewatched it so many times, and it was one of my favorite movie moments from this entire year. Please watch Saturday Night when you get a chance. Disclaimer, I did not see this movie in theaters, which was dumb. My bad. Number 5 is Dune 2 Electric Doonaloo, which I know is going to rub some people the wrong way. Everyone and their mom says this is the best movie of the year, or at least top 3, and I think that's fair. That's a super valid opinion to have. I just don't have it. Dune 2 is an enormous movie from the cast to the setting to the story beats to the sound to everything else. It feels big, and I think part of why it caught fire socially is because it's been a while since we've seen movies of that scale. Plus, it is gorgeous to look at. Like, the black and white scenes of Austin Butler fighting in the Coliseum thing, unbelievable. In fact, Austin Butler was easily my favorite part of this movie. He dominated his screen time and was the most interesting character to me by far. My only real gripe with Dune 2, which is once again a personal taste thing and probably not an objective critique, is that the movie is so massive that it sometimes loses the little moments for me. Like, my favorite part of Paul's character arc is him wrestling with his destiny as these people's messiah and him fighting that title off for a long time. But Dune 2 stays so large scale and wide in its focus that sometimes the little character moments get lost along the way for me. I feel like I don't even know most of these characters as people, but just as their roles in the war. Maybe it's just me though. Dune 2 was still insane and answered a lot, and I mean a lot, of the exposition from Dune 1. Easily worth seeing just for the cultural hype, since I think it's unanimously the big blockbuster of the year, but also a very worthwhile story on its own.
Let's fucking go! Let's fucking go.
Shut up. I know it's superhero slop, but wow is it good slop. Number 4 belongs to Deadpool and Wolverine, which is arguably the other big blockbuster of the year. Talk about a light in the darkness when it comes to modern superhero movies. For context, this summer some friends and I watched every Fox X-Men movie leading up to the release of Deadpool and Wolverine, ending with us literally finishing Logan 20 minutes before we left for the theater. So watching this franchise come together with a resounding high note was so gratifying. And at first I thought it was just me being hyped from watching all the other X-Men movies and the cameos getting me excited. But no, I went and watched this a second time about a month later, and it still held up. It has some of my favorite action of any superhero movie. I mean, that Honda Odyssey fight scene is magical. And it was just as funny, if not funnier, than the other Deadpool movies for me. I will admit that the Deadpool multiverse stuff was unnecessary, and in my first review for it, I even argued that this actually walks Wade Wilson back a few steps as a character, but it makes up for it in spades in other areas. You can tell from the writing that this doesn't come from studio execs, it comes from people who love these characters and actors who love their characters like family. If there was a movie casting Hall of Fame, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine need to be in the first induction ceremony. Plus, my favorite X-Man is Gambit, and well, you know.
Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
Deadpool and Wolverine had the magic I've wanted out of Marvel projects for a while. It is a hilarious, action-packed, super endearing tribute to a lot of movies that carved the way for it. Some good, some bad, but it loves the good and the bad, and pushes forward to make one of the most fun movies of the whole year. As we enter the top 3 on my list, we hit a complete tonal pivot from the last movie. My third favorite movie of the year is Conclave, which absolutely came out of nowhere for me. You want to talk about a drama that gets everything right and keeps you invested the entire time? Look no further than Conclave. Edward Berger is incredible with the camera. I watched a little bit of Your Honor on Netflix, and that's another thing he did. It's really good too. Every shot here is framed like a painting, so methodical, so intentional, and the use of color is just mwah. Red is the primary color of the movie, and they layer it into almost every scene to add visual flair and angst. It's gorgeous. And Ralph Fiennes, is that how you say it?
There was a flashback scene where you played a young Ray Fiennes.
Huh, that's weird. Okay. Anyway, Rafe needs a Best Leading Actor nomination like yesterday. He carries such an emotional burden with a very dynamic character who makes real-life decisions and faces real-life consequences. Conclave's writing is unbelievable, with lots of twists and turns that keep you on your toes. I won't spoil it, but there's a twist in the third act that had everyone in my theater gasp out loud, and I mean everyone. Another thing I love about Conclave as a Protestant Christian is that it addresses a problem within the church that many believers don't want to acknowledge. Conclave illuminates that yes, the church is not a perfect system, but that's because it's made up of broken people. Every one of these characters are flawed in their own complex ways, and any organization is only as strong as its people are. These characters are all imperfect, so how could they find a perfect pope to lead them? The answer is they have to do the best they can, but they know that they're not their own saviors. The protagonist's speech about certainty being the enemy of unity hit me right in the gut. We need leaders who know they aren't perfect. We need leaders who doubt and acknowledge their own failures. It felt especially strong in the modern American political landscape, but we'll get into that later. Everyone, I beg you, if you have free time soon, please watch Conclave. It is a gorgeous, gripping, masterful drama that I think has some layer of appeal to anyone and everyone. Alright, here it is. Runner-up for my favorite movie of the year. The silver medal goes to none other than Civil War. So take everything I said about Conclave as a gripping drama and bump it up by like 20% for Civil War. I cannot remember the last time I walked out of a theater as physically shaken as I did after Civil War. It got to me, dude. And I know some people hated it and thought it was stupid. Actually, several of my friends didn't like it because they thought it was going to be an action movie, which that's on you for not seeing the marketing. Anyway, I think part of the reason Civil War really hit me the way it did is because I saw it in April 2024. There was an election looming in the distance, and between social media and the January 6th insurrection, we have never felt more divided as a country since the time we, literally had a civil war. Now, I'm not here to preach politics at you, especially when I want everyone to stick around for my number one choice, but what I'm getting at is that Civil War was an incredibly timely movie for me. It didn't feel like, hey, this is gonna happen, so you better freak out and get ready, but more of a thoughtful consideration of, if a civil war were to happen, this is what it could look like. I think Alex Garland was incredibly careful about how he told this story, because one slip up and it becomes a political hit piece. But what I saw instead was an examination of the American people told through the lens of journalism in the social media era. I loved how it asked valid questions about the role of a journalist. Are we validating sensationalism and highlighting the worst of what humanity has to offer by reporting on it? But at the same time, if we have the resources to do so and atrocities are happening around us, are we not obligated to report on it? I don't know. I just loved how carefully, thoughtfully, and beautifully Civil War told its story at a time when stories like this need to be told. Not to mention a fantastic performance from Kirsten Dunst, and a performance from Jesse Plemons that warrants a conversation in itself. The sound of the movie was also top-notch. Civil War is not an action movie, but the gunshots are loud. They are meant to replicate the feeling of civilians being around real guns, and it practically jump scares you once or twice. They really level it out well with the dialogue, and the soundtrack was fantastic too for just tonal nausea. The scene where they drive the van through a burning forest while Breakers Roar by Sturgill Simpson plays in the background is like the platonic ideal of a movie scene for me. Yeah, I'm pretty unapologetic about loving Civil War, and I honestly would not mind rewatching it to do a separate video on it sometime soon, but that can wait, because waiting for us now is my #1 favorite movie of the year. If Civil War was unapologetic love, this is a whole nother ballgame. But before we get into it, let's run through a few other movies that didn't make the list as quick as possible. Ready? Let's go. Anora, great, but not for me. The Order, really good, but just shy of top 10. Wild Robot, beautiful, loved it, but I didn't like the third act, and I don't think it's peak DreamWorks. Rebel Ridge, great, but it's a Netflix original. Joker 2, too many cigarettes. Beekeeper, it's terrible, but please watch it. Red 1, it's terrible, please don't watch it. Kung Fu Panda 4, atrociously bad and disrespectful to one of my favorite franchises ever. Awkwafina should never get hired again. Garfield movie, peak, but ironically. We Live in Time. Hot take, I think Florence Pugh had better chemistry with Harry Styles in Don't Worry Darling. Sorry, not sorry. I saw the TV Glow. Really pretentious, I hated it. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Good, but there's no Caesar. Okay, that's enough. There were a lot of good movies this year and a lot of okay movies this year, but we don't have time for all of them. Ladies and gentlemen, the honor of my favorite movie of the year 2024 goes to The Fall Guy. Oh man, if this opinion is what keeps me out of film school, then I wasn't cut out for it anyway. I loved this movie. I cannot stress how strongly I feel that Ryan Gosling is the GOAT. I don't know if he's the best actor of all time, or the best comedic actor of all time, or the best action hero of all time, but I know for certain that he is the GOAT. I think above all else, what The Fall Guy does for me is that it is so unapologetically fun. That's kind of hard to find these days. It pulls no punches, it's not tongue-in-cheek, there's no thin layer of sarcasm. It's just a passionately fun movie that loves what it is and has full faith in the finished product. And it's also a love letter to both action movies in general and specifically the world of stunt work. I mean, it's an action movie by the production studio behind John Wick, so like, how could it go wrong? And The Fall Guy is hilarious, and it's sweet, and it's action-packed and creative, and just, it's everything to me. Is it silly? Sure. It's not a huge sci-fi epic like Dune or a tense drama like Civil War, but it is everything I want out of a movie and more. Also, I'll just say it. I Was Made for Loving You by Kiss is one of the greatest songs ever written, and it is the main theme of this movie. They play it like 5 times and remix it for whatever Ryan Gosling is doing in a given moment. It is beautiful. And not enough directors are putting Kiss music in their movies, and it's a real problem with Hollywood these days, but I digress. Look, I know you're supposed to be pretentious in a movie ranking and put the winner of the Palme d'Or or whatever at the top, but that's not who I am. There are certain things in movies that fill me with life and make me passionate about filmmaking and art and storytelling, and The Fall Guy is what did it for me. It is a beautiful tribute to movies in its own right, and I loved it. The Fall Guy is my #1 movie of the year. So, I guess that does it. Surely there aren't any other movies that came out in 2024 that I... Oh, no. No. What is that? No, you get out of here. You're not supposed to...
Chaos Control!
I can't not do it. I'm sorry, guys. Sonic 3 had to be here somewhere. I could only fight it for so long. Look, in a perfect world, I would put Sonic 3 as my top movie and feel no shame about it. But it's not a perfect world, and I know that because Sabrina Carpenter still hasn't responded to my DMs. Sonic 3 is an unbelievably fun movie with so much good going for it. I'm not kidding when I say Jim Carrey as both Robotniks needs its own Oscar category. But I cannot, in good faith, put Sonic 3 at my top spot just because it has Shadow the Hedgehog in it. No other movie that came out this year has Shadow the Hedgehog in it, and that's on them. Do better, Hollywood. But here's the problem. I literally cannot remove my bias from ranking this movie. I have no basis to objectively judge it as a film because my attachment to the Sonic franchise is too strong. It's like asking someone to judge a 3rd grade talent show, but their kid is one of the participants. Of course you're going to be biased towards your kid. And that's what asking me to rank Sonic is. So, for the sake of this video, I will just say that Sonic the Hedgehog 3 belongs in its own position and cannot be justly ranked against the other films that came out this year. If you want my much more in-depth and much more psychotic review of this movie, I have a separate video up on my channel with my thoughts on it. However, due to my own pride, it's an unlisted video, and the only way you can see it is by following the link on my Letterboxd review of the movie. So if you want to see it, go follow me on Letterboxd. Or, if you're correctly thinking that I am mentally ill in some way and you don't want to see me anywhere near Sonic the Hedgehog analysis, you can ignore it. Your call. So that's it. 2024 had a lot of movies that I really loved, some I didn't love, but even if they weren't my favorite, I still enjoyed seeing them. What's your take on my list? Am I a big dumb idiot with bad taste? Probably, but, screw you. What other movies would you like to see me talk about? What movies did you like? Leave a comment and I'll get back to you in 3 to 4 business days. Leave a like too and maybe subscribe while you're at it. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a happy new year.